Okay, everybody, how are you? So, to the public, this is the OGs of a mother's love. And for us, OGs mean original grandmothers. We don't believe any organization can operate unless you represent all generations and all voices. So, I can tell you a little bit about how a mother's love was started. We came to the table 6 years ago. Kim was one of the original ones, and Cheryl was one of the original ones that came to the table with me. We tried to bring a mother's love to the community, saying that we as Black mothers needed a voice and we needed to make sure the community understands that a lot of change that has to happen in the community has to come with the Black mother being involved in it. In most cases, even when we have our men in our home, we play a role, they play a role, but at the end of the day, mama has to say. Now, that is something that has always been the case in the Black family. So I'm going to bring in the mothers, and at the end of this, we'll wish everybody a happy new year. It's been a roller coaster year for us, but it's been a roller coaster 6 years for us. But as Black mothers, you know what we do. We don't ever stop fighting for our kids. So I'll start out this year. I'll say this. We fight a lot against gun violence in the community, domestic violence in the community. We fight a lot for people who have been disenfranchised, who have been traumatized, not just by us, not just by the police, but by systems that have been in place for years that hold families down in the Black community. We fight for all of that. We started 2020 with a homicide from our community. We ended 2020, hopefully, with a homicide by the police. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black Lives Matter, whether that life is taken by somebody who looks like us or by somebody who's wearing blue. One of the people in our panel, Kim White. Kim, can you raise your hand? Kim White lost her son to gun violence in North Minneapolis. And it's a traumatic thing for her every time we help a family. It like rips a Band-Aid off of a wound because her wound never healed. So it's really just covered by a Band-Aid. So every time we deal with a family in trauma, she has to revisit her trauma. But it doesn't ever stop her from making sure that some family has their issues, their needs, and their pain addressed. And I appreciate that from you, Kim. So we'll start this off talking about this year was a whirlwind of the pandemic, George Floyd, high numbers of violence in our community, whether it's carjackings, whether it's the young kids who died in a carjacked vehicle, or whether it's by the hands of somebody wearing a Minneapolis Police Department. This has been a long year in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and in this country. So can we start out talking about how COVID, the pandemic, affected not just your life, but the lives of the people we serve? So if I could start with you, Donna.
2020 was, you're right, it's been quite traumatic. When the pandemic hit, I can honestly say, personally, I didn't want it to stop us, and it didn't. We immediately hit the ground feeding seniors, making sure they had hot meals throughout the week. I think it was up to close to 600 a week we were doing, helping deliver meals to during that first March, April, May. The pandemic hit us me personally because myself, my brother, one of my brothers, and my parents, all four of us have health issues. My parents being the ones with the most severe. So it's literally been a year of not being able to touch them, to hold them almost until, emergency situations occurred. And that's been hard. And I didn't realize how much I took that for granted. On the organizational side, we never stopped. We immediately went into who do we need to serve, which was our seniors at the time. And then when George Floyd happened, we immediately went into the spring summer feeding program, and we fed well over with the help of Gethsemane Lutheran Church, well over 150,000 people this summer.
Well, Donna, I wanted to touch on this piece that you left out. You got married.
Yes, I did.
In the midst of a pandemic.
And that was interesting.
Sadly, your mom and dad could not attend because of their health reasons and coronavirus, but you were a beautiful bride.
Thank
you. I was happy to be your maid of honor. I need to tell everybody I was walking down the aisle.
In a dress.
I tripped and fell because there was a hole in the ground. Yep. And if nobody else will step in a hole, it will be you. Wearing heels.
But I couldn't have done it without the whole team. Kim Griffin and Nona and them came even when we were on duty with the drowning of the 6-year-old baby. We were still on duty, but they stopped, came and helped decorate. And then when they finished helping decorate, I didn't even get a chance to see them. And they disappeared and went back over to the scene to assist the family. So this year has been filled with blessings and trauma and blessings from and to us. What we did this year is unprecedented. We served over 170,000 people with food. Our donors kicked in and supported us on every effort that we made. From now go down the list, from our boots on the ground to downtown and on Broadway, to our trauma assistance at the crime scenes, to our girls leadership program we couldn't do this year, our moms classes we've been doing online, our mother-daughter videos that we did, video that we did last summer, our summer feeding program, our assistance with the social injustice with the death of George Floyd. So while this year we might have been in a pandemic, it never stopped us from doing what we as a mother's love are called to do.
I think one thing I wanted to add with George Floyd is it hit us all personal because all of us, with the exception of Sharon, but she has many grandsons, all of us have sons or grandsons or both. So when you have a man on the ground and the person he called to, it's right into what we keep saying. He called for mom. What we didn't know was he was calling for her in heaven. But what he did do was piercing to the heart of Black mothers. I'm sure all mothers, but for sure, Black mothers. And for me, I remember all of that video, but when it got to that one part, I was done. I was completely fell apart. Cheryl, did you want to speak on that?
You're saying when you got to the part where the video part where he said when he called his mom, I think that was the most devastating for me as well, because I think when I heard him say mama, he was crossing over and he seen her, or she was pulling him in, and it was just like, if you wasn't a crier, you cried. It's sad to think about it every time.
Kim, for you, I know any death is hard, and I can't hug you enough times because I don't think it'll ever be enough. I don't know why it's saying that. It's saying 40-minute time limit. Oh, okay. She said, I'm fine, guys. But Kim, do you want to talk about how you're feeling? Because we've seen you have to unmute. We've seen a lot of death this year. You have to unmute. Unmute.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Look, she needed her grandson.
Yes, it was very impactful for me. It took me back, like you said, every time that there is a life snatched by violence. I don't care what kind of violence it is. Um, it really does take me back. Uh, I often wondered if my son called my name, and I know that he did. I know that he did. Um, what, if anything, I could have done? But that was most impactful for me, and it broke me. It truly did break me. So I was compelled and drawn to the entire George Floyd um, situation, from the protests, just his family, especially, and then the community, an already broken community that was, if there was a possibility to break it even more, that did it. Uh, so for me, that was a very, very strong, impactful moment. And what it did for me was, it actually, I mean, I watched that with my grandson, and he had questions. He had a multitude of questions. And so therefore I had to educate him, because this is his history, unfortunately. I think back on our history, and our history were our heroes, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. And, those were the people that, that was our history. And unfortunately for our young brown skinned children, this is their history. And it saddens me. It breaks my heart.
Sharon, how did it make you feel? Even though you don't have sons, you have a brother. We had two brothers. Our baby brother died just before his first birthday. You have an abundance of grandsons. How did it make you feel?
But I do. I have a 9-year-old son. Remember?
Oh yeah, I
And
forgot you adopted him.
yeah, and it's like how it made me feel is it's sad because things have changed, but they haven't. And we teach our kids. It's sad to have to teach our kids, especially our boys, that they have to carry themselves a certain way, and then when they do carry themselves that way, they still end up getting hurt. You know, it's like I tell my son all the time when we go into the store, keep your hands out your pocket. Don't touch anything. You know, it's like I sat back and I looked at them and they had the little Rice kid on the news the other day, how they found nothing justified. They found no reason to hold anybody accountable for his death. This was a 12-year-old kid that he got shot for playing with a BB gun, which and it makes you think, if that child had been a different color, would he be dead? So these are the things that I had to think about. My son's coming up on 10 now, and he's so trustworthy that everybody's going to treat him the same, and then have to tell him, no, this has never been our history. That there's always somebody going to judge you just by the color of your skin. So how do I educate him? And I'm an educator. And the sad part about it is most of our kids don't know our history, what we've gone through, what the traumas that have happened. Every time we go to a crime scene, I'm afraid that I'm going to see one of my kids that I teach out there on the street. It's like the kids I teach from K through 8, and our boys, they think that nothing can touch them. And it's like when we go out there and they live in this area, or I get a call from the parents because the gun violence is so close to them that they got to hide their kids under the bed. So with George Floyd, I took my kids over there so they could see. And it's like somewhere along here, we've got to have hope that something's going to change, that we don't have to worry about walking outside and getting shot for no reason, whether it's by somebody our own color that looks like us, or somebody in blue. I don't see the difference. If we're shooting each other, we're still wrong. If we're killing, I couldn't even let my kids go outside for the summer because of the gun violence. And that wasn't the police, that was our own community, you know? And it's hard to try to keep a 9-year-old in the house because you're afraid that they're going to shoot him by accident.
I was talking to a Black mom the other day, and she was telling me that she was talking about marching and protesting against police violence, which I applaud anybody who, I think you should always ask questions. I don't think cops should get upset if you question an action of theirs. We are not above the law. But what she said really stuck with me. And I just want to know how you feel about that. And I'll start with you, Donna. She said, well, we expect in this conversation, well, we expect us to do that, but we don't expect the police to take our lives. I said, we expect us, we should expect us less of taking our lives, because if nobody knows our struggle, it's us. But it was kind of shocking to me that and I think a lot of people feel that way, because I always hear people say, oh, but if we did it, we would go to prison. Not all the time. A lot of times we don't go to prison. Why? Because we don't tell. We'd rather sleep with that murderer under our roof. But I do think cops should always be held accountable. But I don't think we should continue to make excuses for the behavior in our community. How do we tell a family, I mean, what did you expect? Your son is dead, somebody Black killed him. You should have expected that. Should we?
No, we
Donna,
should
can you
not.
speak on that?
We shouldn't expect our children to be killed. Our children are supposed to outlive us, and we're watching them die at the hands of our own at such a rapid rate that there may not be any, but by the time this is all said and done, our children, there may not be enough to take care of the seniors that are left, less known their community or their family. I think about all the shootings that we've been to this summer, and the reality is, while some may look at it as we expect ours to shoot ours, that's why this continues to grow so rapidly in our community. It should not be an acceptable behavior. It's not something that we should accept. It's not something that we should tolerate at all, period. So to hear someone say, well, we should expect it from our own, that's the last place we should expect it, the very last place, because I've been thinking a lot about the things that my grandmother and them taught me over when I was growing up. And it was either my mom or my grandmother or both that said, my great grandmother and my great great grandmother didn't die till I was 16. So I had all those women, those grandmothers in my life to take care of me and to guide me as a woman and to get in my butt when I was in trouble, which I stayed in quite a bit. But those women, those heads of our family, they made sure we knew how to act in public. They made sure that we knew that the color of our skin could jeopardize our life sometime in the future. So this is how you carry yourself when you're outside. This is how you act while you're in school. They didn't make excuses for us when we were wrong. That was a time when Miss Betty, Miss Susie, Miss Johnny Mae down the street may catch you coming home, and you might get your butt whooped by all of them on the way home. And our communities are lacking that now. Everybody is so afraid. There was a time when my ex-husband said, you can't walk around here treating everybody's kid like they're yours. Yes, I can. And because we no longer do that, that's part of what we're seeing in this generation of children right now.
I agree.
Well, this is a kind of a gimme generation, but it's not their fault.
No.
I don't fault them, because we have given freely, not making them earn what they get.
I agree.
We haven't really been disciplinarians with our kids. And a lot of it is because we're afraid of what the world has for our kids, what they'll face. And we don't recognize that we play a role. But I wanted to say this to people now because I want to have Cheryl speak. If you have been an addicted person, when I say addicted, I'm talking about drugs. Raise your hand. There's a reason I asked you guys to do that, because I handpicked my team. I don't, and I handpicked the team for a reason, because I don't believe you can tell mothers or you can tell daughters about life if you haven't lived it. So we are a team of mothers, just for the world to know, who have been victims of child protection, drug addiction, domestic violence, gun violence, where our sons are either buried from it or in prison because of it. We are women who have been sexually abused, exploited. We have women who have done what we had to do to feed our children. We are women who came from poverty and knows what that feels like, and been able to rise above it through all that we have endured in life. And I think it's important for people to understand the background of a mother's love. So I want you, Cheryl, to talk about addiction and how it affected your life. And you can feel free to tell our story.
Okay, thank you. Well, first part of addiction is acceptance. And you have to be able to admit being an addict. And I would like to say I've been sober since September 27th, 1991. And I am a crack addict. And I went through a lot of things, and I didn't care. I just wanted to get high. And to the point, I'm going to tell me and Lisa's story, because I got a lot of stories, but I'm going to tell me and Lisa's story. I mean, I've stolen from Lisa. I did some wrong things to Lisa. And Lisa always was there for me as my friend, took care of me and my children, let me live with her. And I still did negative just because I wanted to get high. And I didn't care, just as long as I could get high. And the short of that story is Lisa told me, she was a cop, a Minneapolis cop. And she said, I'm going to make sure they take your children from you. And I don't know what else to have to use to sober me up, but that sobered me up, because I believed her and I knew that she had the power to do it. I knew that she would have taken my children and brought them to her home, because they know her affectionately as Aunt Lisa, and they still to this day call her that. But my thing is that I knew she had the power to take my children, and I wasn't going to have that. And I said, well, forget all that. I quit.
Yeah, I cut in here. So I'll tell the story. I came to visit Cheryl. She lived over there by Banneker.
Banneker.
Yeah, I came over there to visit her. I was in full Minneapolis police uniform, knock on her door. She in there getting high with two guys, and her son was in the room. And I told her, I'm gonna come back again, and you better have sobered up, or when I come back again, I'm taking your son, and you're not getting him back. I said, get it together. I love her with all my heart, and I'm not kidding when I say this. She got it together. She didn't go to treatment. A lot of people do need that extra help. But Cheryl tried so hard to have a second child, and that was her son. She tried so hard to have this second kid. And my whole thought process is, you went through HELL to have this, don't cry, because you know how I am, to have this kid, and you got him witnessing you sit in this environment with these two low down, no good brothers who don't care that your kid is in this house while they getting you high. And I promise up to God, no more. She was done. But I meant what I said. When I took him, I would have took him as a cop, and I would have took him as her best friend. And he would have come and lived in my house. He wasn't going to nobody's system. He was coming to my house. I meant what I said. That wasn't a threat, that was a promise. But I'm proud of you, sure.
And I believed you. You was the best treatment I could ever had.
When you're
And
talking about your man,
And if I
still
never
proud.
told you, thank you, Lisa. I love you.
I love you too. Sharon, did you want to talk about what addiction did to you?
Yeah. Um, you know, when I came here, we grew up in Chicago. And so they sent me here to Minnesota. And I'm gonna get emotional. Uh, they sent me here to take care of my dad. But nobody ever told me he was dying. So when he died, I was here in a town that I had family, but I didn't know them. So I turned to the alcohol and the drugs. I just wanted to forget. I was angry. I was mad at my dad. I was mad at my mom. But I had 3 kids when I came here. I think I drank just to forget. Then I got high. I was on crack. You know, you gotta give me a minute. I end up even getting hit by a car and was almost told I was supposed to die.
Shuffling songs
Still,
by Toddler Time.
Alexa,
Amazon Music.
pause. I was supposed to die. And for some reason, God kept me here. You know, it's like I tore my face, my body, and messed up my teeth and everything. And even after getting out, I was in a coma for what, Lisa, about 6 months, almost a year. They told my mom I would never walk again. They told my family that I was going to be brain damaged. And they had brought my kids in to say goodbye to me. And the sad part about addiction, even when I learned how to walk and everything again, I still went back out and started drinking. My sister had my kids, Lisa had my kids a lot. My kids call her Auntie Mama. And the beauty of it is, I grew up in a family with a bunch of preachers. So we knew how to carry ourselves, but when the addiction comes along, everything just goes out the window. You know, it's like my sister's a cop. She working on the north side, I'm getting high on the south side. If she comes over south to go to work, I'm going north. You know, just so they couldn't see me. You know, it's like I was very particular about knowing that people knew me. So I had to carry myself a certain way, even though I was out there getting high, so that my mom wouldn't know about it, because Pastor Spratt was going to find out everything.
And what did the Minneapolis cops tell you? I'm gonna tell your sister on you.
Yep, all the time. I run it, go into it's like sometimes I'd be in the club and like they was following me. You know, it's like Charlie and all of them. You know, it's like it was just weird, and it's like, and the more I drank and got high, the less I was able to forget the pain that I was feeling. And you couldn't share this pain with people. You know, the people you were with, they didn't have time to hear about that. All they wanted to do was get high. you know, so it's like I'm constantly hurting and trying to figure out how to deal with it. And then one thing that got me to go to treatment was my kids. One night they came in, they had been with Lisa for the weekend, and they came in because I never got high around them, but they knew that something was up because I always dropped them off at my family's. So they came in one day, and I had the four girls at the time, and each one of them just laid around me like a shield. Uh, it's been 30 years, y'all, and that still makes me cry. Cause I got up that morning and I dropped my kids off at school, and I went to my mom's and I told her I need help. If I don't get help, I'm gonna die. So my mom took me to the hospital, and they tried to send me home. And I told her I'm not leaving here, because if I leave here, I'm not gonna come back. So it was actually Peter Hayden that helped me from Turning Point. Peter Hayden put me out, and I thought he was taking me out in the country somewhere. And actually, I find out now I was just on Golden Valley Road, but I had never been there. And he put me there, and I've been sober for 30 years now.
Yay.
You know, 31 actually. It's 31 years, and I have never once. Everybody said that I had to change everything. My friends, when I got out of treatment and stuff, they act like I had the plague. I've only had two people from my past that that had never treated me different, and that's my family and a good friend of mine that
So,
huh?
so unfortunately, I want to tell all of our stories because I really don't think people know a mother's love. I mean, if they knew us, they would understand how many minutes I got? My daughter is telling me, because y'all know how technically dumb I am. She told me to mute my microphone, y'all. But while I'm doing that, let me say this. I need to say some quick thank yous, and then I have a question. So I want to thank the county. The county has been so kind to us this year, making sure we get our COVID message out there. I want to thank the city. The city has been supportive, especially the Office of Violence Prevention with Sasha Cotton and Aaron. I don't know how to pronounce Aaron's last name, Donna, but Aaron, the Minneapolis Foundation with Shonda Baker, and the community at large. They have been our greatest supporters this year. There were times when we had nothing, and the community made so much happen.
The biggest crybaby.
She worse than all of us.
I'm trying not to.
I struggled for 6 years to get people to understand the Black mother and our ability to save the child. 6 years. But who kept me afloat? I had to even take a back seat because I was spending all the money out of my pocket and tapping into my kids' college money. And over the last 3 years, the community have shown up and showed out for a mother's love. Hey, can we take just a break and come back?
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get myself together.
She's gonna be okay.